late stage, you should also be working on like sport specific stuff, position specific things. Like, how did they get hurt? Cool. They got hurt doing a dodge in whatever sport it is, or, in football, a cut from one side to the other. Okay. Let me work on that with you over and over and over again to help you overcome that fear.
Yeah, the one by Mick Hughes is the Melbourne one. Is that the one
Yep.
that you mentioned? Yeah, that's the one that we use, and it's great. That was like a game changer for me when I got that one compared to like seeing some of the other time-based protocols that we would have followed just in PT school, and even like recommended by some of the surgeons that we were seeing the clients post-op. You mentioned not using a protocol really for 3 years, and kind of this idea of like going off your feel or your intuition based off of like obviously the experience you've had in the diving deep into the nuances of ACL rehab. Like, I know you're not just kind of being like, I think we should go forward with this. What then, how are you just, is there certain things that you see or you're seeing in the process that then is just like, okay, that's a check, I'm moving forward, like kind of Wesley's own kind of protocol that he likes to see?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, like when I do my posts on Instagram, a lot of times I'll write like early phase, early to mid phase, because I hate, again, telling weeks, because almost every single post I do, someone will ask me, what week are they? What week are they? And I honestly just don't answer it because frankly, I don't even know, because I don't remember when I recorded that video. A lot of them are older. So I break them up into that kind of phases. So it's like, for me, the early phase is what we talked about, range of motion, swelling, controlling, all that kind of stuff. Cool. You're good. Check all those. Early to mid phase is kind of your progressive loading phase. You're not running yet. You're not doing movements yet. All you're doing is really loading, getting stronger, focusing on neuromuscular control with balance and things like that. And then you start to get into the mid phase where you are starting to jog. You are doing some like single leg force absorption exercises, and then getting the knee comfortable loading unilaterally, and starting to work on type of maybe gentle type of movements and things like that. And then you get to like the mid to late phase, and you're starting to really ramp up things to like 75% speed, working on slight change of direction, a little bit of cutting here and there. Obviously, you're still progressively loading the entire way. And then your end phase, your late stage should look like the athlete is fully healthy, working on like the kind of the final details of what they're neglecting or what they're missing out on, whether it's strength, maybe it's power, maybe they're doing a single leg hop and they're just not going as far, or maybe you're testing them on their strength. You're doing strength testing and they're testing at like 87, 88% and trying to fill in those gaps. And that's why testing is so important, because they're giving you objective numbers that you can figure out, okay, what can I do? Work on them for a couple weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, retest again. Cool. Now they're at 90, 91%, and that's what progress should look like. So that's, and late stage, you should also be working on like sport specific stuff, position specific things. Like, how did they get hurt? Cool. They got hurt doing a dodge in whatever sport it is, or, in football, a cut from one side to the other. Okay. Let me work on that with you over and over and over again to help you overcome that fear. Oh, I got hurt being tackled. I'm not going to tackle you, but I'm going to give you some contact. We're going to like, hit each other a little bit, because you have to get used to doing that in the clinic in a very controlled setting before you start releasing them into that kind of like chaotic practice setting or game setting. I try to do everything I can to replicate as many game-like situations as possible, so that when they go back to practice, they're like, I've been here. I've done this before with Wesley. Like, I know I'm ready to go, as opposed to being like really timid and being like, I think I'm ready. I'm not really sure. I haven't done this before. I'm really, really nervous. I usually tell people that like, I want them to feel more on the like butterfly anxiety type of thing, as opposed to like a fearful, scared type of feeling. And it's so like, it's close, they kind of teeter along each other, but I really do think it's important. And that's what we talked about before, where the psychological side is equally as important. I know Steph is really, really big on that, and I've learned a lot from her from that aspect of it too. But it's a whole system that needs to, and a whole like process that needs to go into place in order to, successfully clear a kid to go back to playing.
Yeah, and that's what I've always appreciated about like consuming your content is like, you post a lot of like videos showing you working on those things with kids in the clinic. Like I think I just saw one the other day with like one of your lacrosse players who was like, on the turf, like running up and cutting on the turf, and then out in the back of the spot there throwing against the wall. Like that kind of stuff is cool to see, and I think it's super important for us as a profession to like be able to create environments for athletes and clients to be able to be exposed to those things, to make sure that they're strong and confident and feeling good heading back into whatever sport they're doing. I guess on that note is like, what are maybe some common, you know, mis- mistakes, or maybe not mistakes, but maybe places where we could get better at as clinicians with regards to ACL rehab? It could be early stage or even anywhere along the process that you would think.
This could probably take up the entire
Yeah,
episode by
I
itself.
figured.
But I would say not blindly following a protocol is probably one of the places I would start. Because again, I talked to you how about right now I have a patient who her foundation is being set a little bit later, right? There are some people who 4 weeks, they have full range of motion, their quads look great, they're doing, X, Y, and Z and no problems, no pain or anything like that. You can just kind of free flow and keep going. But then what happens if you're 7, 8 weeks post-op and you still don't have full range of motion, but yet this protocol says that at 6, 7, 8 weeks, you should be starting to do goblet squatting or split squats or whatever those protocols will say. Are you going to load them when they don't even have their foundation quite set yet? And then on top of that, does that mean you're taking away from the time of working on their foundation, and you just keep loading and loading and loading, and then you start developing like anterior knee pain, and you're kind of having to backtrack later on. Then you're dealing with a whole bunch of different things. So I think that's where I would start in regards to like making sure the foundation is set, do those things really, really well, and then go to the loading phase. And then that's a whole different thing that is an issue too, because I think a lot of clinicians underload. It's either overloading or underloading. Those are the two things that I really see, is that they get crazy and start picking up a ton of weights and doing a whole lot of stuff and don't talk to the patient about, load management. And like, hey, we loaded really heavy today. Don't do anything tomorrow. Take a day off tomorrow, just completely rest. And then I do think like the last part is like the whole return to sport phase, which is honestly a lot of people, in my opinion, don't really understand. Like, what does real testing look like? What does like working in sports specific movements look like? Those are kind of the big things I feel like are neglected. And even then, to be honest, a lot of places that are doing what they call return to sport testing, like a lot of places, and I've seen them, and people have brought in pieces of paper that have showed me they've been cleared. And these tests are honestly kind of a joke. One in particular was a local place that all they did was, for the strength testing, was a single leg squat. They took a goniometer to my patient's knee and just measured the depth about how low they were going. One single rep. That was it. And that's how they based. And then on top of that, you talk about the hot tests, right? Hot tests are super common. People use them a lot because they don't take a lot of space. They're very easy to conduct. This one girl was about to get cleared, same girl, and her hot test technically was probably like 80, 85%. And to be honest, I actually don't even measure ever. But her landing was like, she was landing with a completely posterior chain dominant landing, like no actual forced absorption knee flexion loading. And they were about to clear this kit to go back into playing off of a second ACL tear, mind you. So these are the things that I've seen, unfortunately, so many times. And people ask, like, why do you care so much about this? And this is kind of exactly why, because that girl was about to get cleared. Like, had her strength coach not sent her to me, I would have bet money that she would have probably suffered a third ACL tear that season, because she was weeks away from getting ready to play in a season. And for her, actually, I personally think COVID kind of saved her, because I think she might have gone out to play. And I'm actually still working with her now, more on like maintenance and just like keeping her really strong. And I asked her, honestly, I think like a couple weeks ago, I was like, hey, if you played last season, do you think you would have been healthy? And she was like, no. She's like, what
Yeah.
I feel now is not even remotely the same about what I felt. And that's what I want them to understand, is that like, I'm not trying to sit here and just have you milk out like a ton of sessions for 10 months to a year because I'm trying to take your money. I want to do this. And I tell them this, like, I want to do this so I never see you ever again. I want to see you at your game. I want to see you out on the turf training with our coaches, healthy, like, I don't want to see you for another ACL because you spend so much time doing this already. Let's just make sure we do it right now, like right the first time, and then kind of go from there. So those are, kind of the full spectrum of every single phase. About there's certain things that I feel like are missed all the time.
Yeah, I think it was Steph that commented on this when we talked to her. Was she said like one of the best things is that clinicians can do is like not be afraid to refer out when they don't know what to do. Like if you feel like, hey, I don't really know where to go from here, it's like, we'll refer out to someone like you, right? Or someone who understands how to take people through this process, so we avoid the potentials that you just talked about. And I think it's a tough, like I can kind of empathize in ways because like it's tough with like, you're getting out of school and you haven't been educated appropriately. That I think that's like a bigger issue, right? But then you get put in a situation where you're working in a clinic where you're only seeing people for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and you don't have the right equipment, but then you're like feeling pressure, like you need to try to do something for this client. And like I think not being afraid to refer out is one of those solutions to that. Like just taking your ego out of it and putting the athlete at the center of it. And then I think the second thing, and I know you do a lot of this with your mastermind, but I think it's on us to educate each other on how to appropriately manage these things to the best of our abilities, so that we have more clinicians who are understanding how to take people through this spectrum of rehab.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, how's your rehab process been? I know where are you at in yours? I've been trying to follow along, but I kind of lost track.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about 5.5 months post up, and it's ironic, I guess, since I'm like a big ACL person, and I honestly am still having a good amount of trouble. I have a lot of um, what people, a lot of, I've had other people, I've talked to other people, including actually McHughes, who actually did a consult for me. And he was just saying how it seems like I'm describing more like a tendinopathy thing. And I don't think my tendinopathy is honestly due to overloading, because I was very conscious. Like I didn't go downstairs until like normally until like 10 weeks post op. I was being super conservative with stuff like that. I think it's just the nature of being maybe a little bit older, and I had a pretty like a really old injury, and a little bit of bad luck that I'm kind of slowly working through this stuff. But I'm working a ton of ISOs, a lot of eccentric work, trying to just calm this tendon down, and I'm hopeful in the next like 2 or 3 weeks things will start to open up a little bit.
Do you feel like that has been beneficial for you working with clients with ACLs? Like, do you think that makes a difference?
Yeah, I mean, this is my second one. I had my first one back in 2010, so it's been a long time, and I obviously have forgot about certain things and I was 11, 12 years younger, so I kind of flew through rehab. But yeah, I think in a sense it gives me the right to say certain things that I feel like if you haven't been through it, you can't really say. I tell them, I was like, I know this, but like ACL rehab sucks sometimes. And they're like, yeah, it does. And I'm like, it's okay that it sucks. I'm like, like at the end of the day, again, we can be a little bit annoyed at the process because it is so long. But again, we talk about controlling the controllables. So, I think a lot of patients really appreciate the fact that I've been through it, because I can empathize with them significantly more. I can literally talk them through a step-by-step process about what I've been through. I can talk to them about exactly what they would experience on surgery day, what they'll feel after surgery, all that kind of stuff, because I've been through it twice now at this point. So it's been an interesting process going through it myself and carrying out your own rehab and having to keep myself accountable. Making sure I write it on my calendar so that even my coworkers can see that I'm doing rehab, and like make sure they call me out if I'm not doing rehab. It's very different because like my patients come in the door, and your patients coming to see you, they do what they do for the most part what you tell them to do, right? And they work their butts off, and then they go home. But for me, I have to make sure I block off, like I literally have to block off time on my schedule and write rehab on my schedule to make sure I, stay in the gym and keep working at this thing to make sure that it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, I know with the amount of clients you told me you're seeing this week, I best believe you better be blocking off that time in your schedule, man, to get that in. Um, Last kind of question here, just to wrap up, is like, what do you hope, like, an athlete or one of your clients, like, um, gets out of the process with you, or kind of like feels when they're done working with you with their ACL rehab?
That's a really good question. Actually, I've actually never been asked that. I want them to feel complete. I want them to feel like they are potentially maybe even better than they were before they got to me. And I work with a lot of younger athletes. So let's say I get like a 15-year-old kid that comes in the door that's never picked up a single weight in their life. I'm taking this as an opportunity to educate them on why it's important to weight lift. I'm educating them on the fact that, hey, look how skinny or atrophied your leg was after surgery. We're going to spend all these months building up all this strength to get your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes as strong as possible. And then you start getting into like the sprinting, the cutting. They're like, whoa, like I feel like a little bit faster than I did before surgery. I'm like, yeah, because you're stronger. You can move faster. And all the confidence that they gain through ACL rehab and the strength they put on, like I want to understand, like, hey, now it's up to you now. Like you have passed all my tests, you have checked every single box, you are ready to go back to play. Now it's up to you to sustain everything that we've gained. That's another part I feel like is missed in ACL rehab. Is like just because you do 10 months of perfect work doesn't mean you just sit on the couch and do nothing or just go back to playing sports, 365 days a year. You have to stay in the gym. You have to stay motivated to keep lifting. Like, do you have to lift at the same volume? No, of course not. But I think that at least twice a week of like a nice steady leg day should be, in my opinion, incorporated into their lifestyle for the rest of their playing careers. I think that that's a big missing component too, because you don't spend all the time building all the strength just for you to let it go away, because you want to play, soccer this season, then run track and then lacrosse and then whatever it is over and over, back and back to back. So I make sure they understand that, hey, you should be lifting regularly after as well. And obviously working on like neuromuscular control and landing and balance, that's also equally as important as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. You want them to feel complete. I think that's a cool way to kind of say all that. Why don't you leave where people can find you on Instagram? And like, I don't know if you're still taking new people into your mastermind or if that's kind of always open, but if it is, let people know where they can find you there as well.
Yeah. So Instagram is probably the best way to find me for anyone who's interested. My handle is Wesley Wang, WANG .dpt. So wesleywang.dpt is where you can find me on Instagram. Mastermind wise, it's always open. So anyone who wants to join, it's always open. At this point, it's actually currently over 300 videos at this point, which is crazy to think. It's been over 2 years since I started that thing.
That's awesome.
I think we're at like 210 some people at this point, maybe something along those lines. So it's like, it's cool to just see a community who is really interested in ACL rehab, and this is the way I look at it, is like I'm able to educate a bunch of people and they're able to better treat their patients beyond that, so I'm kind of reaching a bigger umbrella of patients without necessarily, putting my hands on them and seeing them in person and stuff like that. So I guess for those of you who are interested, it's a growing library of rehab content centered around ACL rehab. I literally have everything from my treatment philosophies and educating people how to do that, all the way from like exercises immediate post-op to quad exercises of ranging difficulties of easy, medium, hard, hamstrings, glutes, calves, and then also into movement, like breakdowns. I actually teach people how to teach certain movements and how to assess things. I also post case studies on there. So I think it's, no bias, but I think it is a great resource for younger clinicians who want to just learn about ACL rehab. And a lot of it at the end of the day can be utilized for honestly any lower extremity athlete that you're working with. I think it's a resource. The reason why I started in the first place is because I thought about where I was when I was, a student and a new grad, and there was nothing like this. I'm sure that maybe sometimes you feel this way. It's like you just feel like you're kind of a deer caught in the headlights. Like, do I even know how to do this? Like, am I doing this the right way? But that's why the mastermind group is there, so you can kind of go into it. And also, I guess another big benefit is the fact that I have a private forum in the group. So literally people can ask questions like, hey, my patient is 6 months post-op. Let's say, for example, the blockage that I talked to you about earlier is like, oh, my patient 3 months post-op, they're stuck at 115 degrees of knee flexion. They literally just won't go anymore. Like, what do you think it is? And I'm able to respond directly on there and, help people that way and educate people that way too. So yeah, full range of exercises from, day one post-op all the way down to late stage reactive sports-specific cutting, that is, all absolutely necessary to go through. So every few weeks I add more and more videos, and it's just going to keep growing. And I guess until I run out of stuff to post. But it's been a kind of a great thing and a great resource for people. So I've enjoyed starting that and enjoyed growing it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Anyone who's listening who's like on the edge or thinking about, diving into more of the ACL world, like I highly recommend it. Like this kind of learning is the best way to do it. Like I haven't personally been part of your mastermind, but I've been part of like Chris Johnson. I did his run course and been part of some of the stuff that he does. And like that's the best way that you can learn about the details and the nuances of these specific niches. So I do highly encourage you guys to check it out if you are having trouble with ACL rehab. And like you said, Wesley, like it translates over to many other injuries in areas of the rehab profession. Like the principles are solid. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Wesley, appreciate your time, man. I know it's been a long day, so thank you very much. And guys, go over and follow Wesley if you guys haven't checked him out yet.
Appreciate it. Thanks for you guys listening.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to like and subscribe and share it on your social media platforms. If you're interested, I have started an ACL Mastermind group, which is a growing library of content centered around ACL rehab. It has exercises ranging from immediate post-op to late-stage sport-specific movements and everything in between. It's a growing library and currently holds over 250 videos. There's content centered around assessments, movement breakdowns, exercise breakdowns, case studies, and a whole lot more. You also gain access to a private forum where you can engage with like-minded people, ask questions, share research articles, and share resources. If you're interested, please feel free to click the link below. Thank you for watching.